All right, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Lindsay Humphreys. Can everyone hear me okay? Give me a thumbs up. Excellent. Okay. So my name is Lindsay Humphreys, and I'm the Program Director for Junior Achievement of New Mexico. Today, you will be joining our JA Virtual Career Speaker Series. This program is designed for junior achievement students across New Mexico, where we highlight business professionals, entrepreneurs, and innovative thinkers from a variety of industries. Each featured speaker will share details about their education, their job, and their career journey. Before we get started, I just want to give a couple virtual etiquette meeting reminders. For everyone who joined a little bit later, this is recorded, so if you do not want to have your video recorded, you can turn that off now. But we record these videos and then we put them up on our YouTube channel so that anyone who wasn't able to join can join the meeting on YouTube. So at this time, if you could please type your first and last name into the chat box. It is the little dialogue box in the top right corner. If you could just type your first and last name, that helps us keep track of who is on the call. And also, if you are an educator and you have students on the call with you, if you could tell us how many students are on the call with you as well. During the speaker's presentation, please make sure that all of your mics are muted. If you have questions during the presentation, please write them down or type them into the chat box, and we will address those during the Q&A portion of the event. Today, we are so excited to welcome Todd Bisio. He is the Director of Operations for Loadpath. Todd, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Lindsay. Happy to be here. I'm excited to get to talk about the aerospace industry here in New Mexico. But before I do that, just to give you a little bit of background, I was born in California, but pretty much grew up here in New Mexico. Went to Garfield Middle School and Valley High School. And at an early age, I really started to have an entrepreneurial mindset. I started doing things before you could go out and get a job, doing small things like mowing lawns, washing cars, doing other odd jobs like that. I even washed fleets of cars for a bank at the time. It was called SunWest Bank. They've been acquired. But I used to wash about 20 cars at a time on a Saturday for them. And it gave me an opportunity to obviously make money, but also make a difference in the community. One of the things that I used to like to do when I would do collections for mowing lawns and throwing newspapers is going door to door to make those personal relationships with the people that I was serving. And in doing that, of course, when you get to know people, they tend to want to help you out. So I would probably get more tips because I went that extra mile, made those relationships with those folks. So after high school, I went off and went to New Mexico State University. So I had a great time there. I was in the business school in financial management. And after I graduated, I was planning on going to Phoenix to be a stockbroker. And I took one opportunity to respond to a position that was posted here in Albuquerque. And I ended up getting that job based on the description in the paper, which was very short. I really thought I was going to be in corporate finance, but it turns out that I was hired to support a program for the Air Force Research Lab. And specifically, it was related to the Maui Space Surveillance Site program. So it was a great opportunity to learn about the aerospace industry, to travel a lot. We were developing a new 3.67 meter telescope on the very highest point of Haleakala in Maui, Hawaii. And I started on that program the week that they had the ribbon cutting for that new telescope site. And I worked on it through the ribbon cutting for the dome and the execution of the operational system. So it was an exciting time. And during that time, I learned a lot about contracting. I learned a lot about finances within the government, what that takes, how to go out and advocate for funding for programs. We'd actually go to Washington, D.C. and put proposals together for the president's budget and congressional ads to support that program and the contractors that were performing all of those activities. And then the contractors themselves, I would go out and with a team to places like Danbury, Connecticut, New York, Los Angeles, San Bernardino, and other places to evaluate the contractor's performance. All of those different subsystems were coming together to be that telescope site on Maui. After about 2 years of doing that, I wanted to be challenged and do something new. Again, I had that entrepreneurial mindset. And so I went to work for a company called SVS, SVS R&D Systems. The initials stood for the founders' names. And about a year after I went over to that company, I started to receive a lot of requests for what they call due diligence, which is basically information that somebody would want about a company if they were going to acquire that business. So because of the role that I played in contracting and managing resources, I was one of the first ones that they came to pull that information together. It was a long process, about a year, and the end result was being acquired by Boeing. So we became Boeing SVS. I stayed with Boeing for about a year after that acquisition, and then I left to be a founder of a company called Quinergy Corporation here in Albuquerque. And Quinergy was founded around a critical piece of intellectual property that was developed by Sandia National Labs and UNM, specifically to advance a long-lasting energy cell called a beta voltaic. This was something that in theory, we're actually able to move it to practice, but was initially conceived as something that could create energy for decades without having to be refueled, recharged, or replaced. So we had venture capital funding that helped support that, as well as government funding and some special niche applications for the military, which was critical. I had left and become a member of Quinergy basically because I was looking for an early exit, high payout. I had little regard for anyone or anything that stood in the way at that time of my life. But because of there were limitations to the technology, costs, the availability of the power source, the radiation, nuclear material, and the product market fit for that particular very niche energy cell, we had limitations. So we proved it, have the highest ever conversion efficiency on record for that type of device. And then we decided, okay, well, we need to expand beyond that one particular technology. So that leads me to the first takeaway, if you want to write this down, is expect and embrace change. You're going to have changes in your career, throughout your career. So encourage you to embrace those and look forward to those and respond in a positive way. So we changed Quinergy to be a technology accelerator company. And our tagline was engage, energize, and empower. What we wanted to do was, rather than every time there was a good idea, like a beta voltaic, and you create a whole business around it and put a whole lot of resources into it, what we did was we said, okay, we have a team. We have tools and capabilities. We have technical expertise. We have approved rates that the government cares about, security clearances, various things that take a long time and a lot of money to put together. Let's leverage that to allow others to come in, and we can help mature their technology at a more rapid pace. So that's kind of where we took Quinergy in that time frame, which was exciting to an extent and for a period of time, but I'm always looking for changes. So after we did that for about 3 years, I left that position as the president and CEO of Quinergy to really focus on community and helping others. So turned that business over to my business partner, and I went out and focused on entrepreneurial training and supporting startups across the state of New Mexico. So I did that through direct support to the City of Albuquerque Economic Development Department, the NMSU Arrowhead Center, and eventually I started a company with a couple other founders called Catapult. So the name was kind of fitting, catapulting other businesses towards success. Gets me to my second takeaway. Life is a contact sport. Everybody should be in a mentoring relationship. So if you're a young person out there, maybe you're in middle school or high school, you can find people that you can mentor, maybe your little brothers and sisters, or maybe your friends. You should also be looking up who can mentor you, and reach out to those people, ask them if they would be in that relationship with you. It's really important as you move forward. As you move forward, mentoring family, friends, coworkers, networking groups, volunteers, volunteering opportunities, they're all gonna help you throughout your life. So the more contacts you have, the better off you are. So one of the things that I do quite a bit is volunteer, and I try to round that out pretty holistically. In terms of education, I'm on the board of directors for JA New Mexico, and I'm also on the New Mexico State University Business Advisory Council, or the dean of the business school. In community and economic development, I'm the chairman of the RGCDC, or Rio Grande Community Development Corporation. We focus on helping small startup businesses gain success. And we also serve as a fiscal sponsor for a lot of the programs that come out. So again, kind of the same mindset that we had at Quinergy. Rather than having a bunch of little startups, we can leverage and help them be successful. That's what we try to do there. In terms of health and human services, one of the other big changes that happened during my time at Quinergy was I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis. If you don't know what that is, it affects the central nervous system. And as a result, I have actually been in remission for many years, but I serve on the MS Society board of directors as well. And of course, work relationships. I'm still very involved in Quinergy, and it's still a going concern. So being involved in community in that way. Third takeaway, humility. Put others first. Don't be like I was when I was early in my career, thinking to myself in those fast exits, think about how you can make a positive impact. I was thinking of that, and I thought of a resource that I think is just one of the greatest books maybe of all time, Good to Great by Jim Collins. So I encourage you to take a look at that. In that, he talks about building businesses mainly, but I would say more personal approaches relates to it as well. That greatness comes from the very DNA or core of the individual and those that lead the organizations. He talks about level 5 leaders. They give before they get. So I like to say they eat last. So if you're in a startup or you have an opportunity to help others be successful, you want to reach out to them, and then that comes around to benefit you as well. A fourth takeaway, great leaders and individuals develop a culture of discipline. So it kind of brings me around full circle. So how do you have discipline in your career when you've been in the marketplace for, 25 years? Do what you love. If you do what you love, you do what you're wired for, you're going to have discipline to pour yourself into it. And that's what you want to, it's where you want to be. So that's a little bit about myself. I think we're still good on time. I'm going to switch to a couple charts real quick. to talk about where I am now, back in the aerospace industry. Okay, so going full circle, I joined a company last year called Loadpath. Loadpath is a small, locally owned and operated aerospace engineering business here in New Mexico. Go to the next one, if you would. So the core competencies of the business around mechanical engineering. We do design, development, assembly, building and testing of various deployable systems for space applications. So we focus on the design analytics, the structures. Thermal is huge. So, if you're putting things in space, obviously the materials are in a different environment than they would be on the Earth. So you have to account for that and adjust for that. And that's what thermal solutions are all about. And then structural testing, we actually run a deployable space structures lab for the Air Force lab. And we also have those tools and capabilities for commercial space applications as well. So rather than talking through a lot of these, I'm gonna show you a picture of one of the devices that we filled in space. And flip to that. All right, so this is a deployable space structure. It's basically an antenna over the Earth. Actually, wait a minute. That doesn't look like the Earth, does it? Looks more like a donut. Let's switch to the next one. There we go. Oh, no, that Earth is not flat. It still doesn't look right. Maybe the next one has it. There we go. So we call our system here that I'm explaining El Paso, lightweight precision array structure on orbit. I thought that was kind of a fun name, given that we're in the area, and our customer liked it as well, so we were good. Although they also like to call it the array mounting structure. So it starts out in that little box in the middle. Obviously, these things are put into space. They've got to get up there on a space vehicle. So they start out very, very small, about 1 meter long, and then we deploy it out to be a total of, this one's going to be a total of 31 meters long in its deployed state. So all of these, these wings that you see on it are all starting out in the little box in the middle, and then they're stowed, if you will, and then they're deployed out once they're in the operational environment. Switch to the next slide, if you would. So a couple points I wanted to make here. One is education. Pretty much all of our people on staff have a college degree. About 50% have masters, but 20% have PhDs. So it's very important to go out and get an education and move forward in your career with that in mind. Also wanted to bring up the certifications, because in it talks about, you think about aerospace and you think about what we do and you think, okay, it's a bunch of STEM folks, right? A bunch of science, technology, engineering, and math folks. But you also need other disciplines to be a successful business. So this first one has to do with accounting and billing. So if you have accounting and billing, obviously you need CPAs, you need business people, you need to prove that you have the right structure in place and maintain the right records to be compliant with your customers' expectations. So that's what that first one has to do with. The second one, Defense Contract Management Association and property management, has to do with your supply chain. So you're purchasing items, sometimes for the government, sometimes for end applications that are fielded. You need to have people who understand and have the passion, who are wired for doing purchasing and being involved in the team in that way. The third, the DFARS and NIST, compliant cybersecurity, that has to do with information technology. So we are highly regulated in terms of how our IT is structured, managed, controlled, and protected. We're protecting assets for the good of our nation, so we need to make sure we're doing that the right way. There are a lot of requirements related to being compliant in that area, so you need IT people. The fourth one down, quality assurance, again, has to do with management, but specifically the execution of activities and being a certified company from a quality standpoint. We're actually currently, hoping that my door doesn't pop open at any minute, having our annual audit in that area right now. So those are things that we get to be involved in and justify. We have policies and procedures in place, and we execute against those in the right ways to show that we deliver what we say we're going to, and it's of a really high standard of quality. That's enough on this one. Just wanted to real briefly go into the opportunity space in aerospace in New Mexico. So in case you don't know, there are over 80 companies. There are aerospace companies in the state of New Mexico. We have a lot of national assets and resources in the state of New Mexico. We have two of the DOE national labs. We have the Air Force Research Lab, Space Command, and the Space Rapid Capabilities Office, all here. The impact of those is significant. It's over $6.2 billion a year that goes back into our economy. Creates a lot of really nice, high-paying jobs, and those jobs represent about 21,000 jobs here in the state of New Mexico. Another point I wanted to make, just as I close here, the industry has internship opportunities. So I encourage you, if you're young folks, to really seek those out. The Air Force Research Lab has a Space Scholars program, which is really exciting, allows you to get hands-on experience out in the field in the labs that we work in every day. You get to learn from seasoned technical engineers. There are a lot of other opportunities as well. So I just wanted to make sure you're aware of that and encourage you to pursue those. Last slide just has my contact information. So you are welcome to reach out if you have questions that you want to ask offline or in the future. And at this point, I'll open it up to Q&A.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Todd. I'm going to just hand it over to our questions that we had that were asked before we started our presentation. So I'm going to start with question number 1. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Question number 1. If you could change one thing about your learning journey or your educational path, what would it be?
I think it would be to really learn about the compassion piece earlier. I always loved what I did when I started my career, but I had a kind of a focus on myself versus others. And I think as I turned that around and became more compassionate for others, that it also encouraged, just resulted in better relationships and better opportunities going forward. So that's probably the area that I would have liked to have learned earlier than I did.
Excellent. And there was one more question that was asked during our registration. It was, what kind of activities, and you touched on this in your presentation a little bit, but what kind of activities did you do or wish you had done in high school or college that helped you prepare for your world of work?
Yeah, I talk to that. I think it's true. Really building relationships and opportunities early is key. Getting involved, whether or not you have a paying job, if you're involved in things like volunteering or you're reaching out to your neighbors and friends, it creates an opportunity to leverage that in the future. So that's something that I just encourage young folks to do. This is a season where it's difficult to connect, right? But there's still ways to do that. One thing I used to do when I was the president and CEO of Quinergy was I would handwrite a note every week to somebody and mail it, which is a kind of an archaic thing to do, but it made a huge impact because nobody else does it. So that's just a little something that is a suggestion maybe to think about. Do it to your grandparents, they'd love it, or anybody else out there.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Would you be able to, or if anyone would like to unmute and ask Todd a question, now is the time that you have to do a Q&A. Patricia, are there any questions in the chat box?
Yes, so there is one question in the chat box, and that is, can you tell us why large governmental organizations like UNM and Sandia National Labs like to work with small business owners, or also known as entrepreneurs?
Well, several reasons. One, they have mandates that they need to have a certain amount of work going to small business. So there are set-asides that are created for that purpose. But a really more important reason is a lot of the smaller startups or smaller businesses in general, they're agile and they're really innovative, where the large major primes tend to be, they have so many restrictions and so much overhead, they tend to have less flexibility to be really innovative. So a lot of times they'll come to the smaller businesses, the individual entrepreneurs, to just add that into their portfolio. And as you build those relationships over time, SBS is an example of that. They might end up acquiring the business. So those are opportunities to create generational success, but it's also an opportunity in the early stages to just have a lot of fun and be innovative and have the resources and the backing of those major institutions to achieve new innovative technology goals.
Thank you, Todd.
Sure.
I'll have a follow-up question here. So when you were saying your points of advice for the students, you said do what you love. So what would be one thing that you look forward to most when you go to work in the morning?
I really look forward to the challenge. Every day's different, it's unique. We're on a growth spurt right now as a business, so we have opportunities to go out and put new proposals together, win new contracts, build new relationships with our vendors and our customers, and really focus on future application space. El Paso is a good example of that. So that started out as something where we had proven in various earlier programs that we could build these panels, and as it grows, then the customer starts to think, okay, can you put these panels together? Can you put them together and ensure that they're going to be robust and flexible in the environment that they need to be in, and packaged in the way that they need to be packaged to meet the mission. And eventually now we're going into phase that we're proposing on, where we'd be making many hundreds of these deployable systems. So it builds on itself, and that's exciting because as we're successful, we see more and more opportunities just coming off of that and from that.
Excellent. Thank you so much. Does anyone else have any questions? All right. Well, we can wrap up. Oh, we have one more question from the chat box. It says, what is space junk?
Yeah, so there's a lot of old systems that are floating around in space because we've had prior missions, right? And so one of the things that that the MSSS I talked about earlier, the telescope site on Haleakala, does is it tracks all of that old technology that's floating around in space, and creates kind of a map in space of where that is, so that as future missions go up, they can be successful. They're not running into that old junk that's flying around, and they're able to deploy in areas where the mission can be successful. So there's a lot of analysis in that area. It's a really fun and interesting field of work to go into.
Excellent. Okay, so we're just going to wrap up for this presentation. So thank you so much, Todd. I hope that all the students that are on the call enjoyed the program. But before we log off, just a couple of announcements. Following this presentation, you will be asked to complete a post-program mindset survey. By completing the survey, you'll be entered into a drawing for a chance to win a Dion's gift card. A huge thank you to Dion's, who has graciously partnered with Junior Achievement to provide gift cards to lucky survey responders. Teachers, please make sure that if you are on the call to share the link with your students when you get it. And then if you complete the survey by Friday, you'll be entered into the drawing. And then please make sure that if you are an APS student or a student that has the numerical email, please provide us with a different one or your teacher's contact information, because otherwise we can't get a hold of you. So lastly, just keep an eye out on your emails, because we have a special presentation next week too. This is our 3-session STEM-focused career cluster. And so we will be partnering with Explora's Science Fiesta Week next week, and we'll have 2 speakers next week. So we'll have one on Wednesday, the 23rd at 1 o'clock, and we'll have Rhonda Harmon Cole from the Air Force Research Lab. And then the next day, we're changing the time. It's going to be at 10:30 in the morning instead. And that one will be with Tina Hernandez from Sandia National Labs. So really exciting to have such a STEM focus for the next 3 speakers. So please join us next week. Thank you so much, Todd. And thank you for everyone for being on the call today. And we'll see you all next week.
Thank you. Bye.